Good evening, everyone. We are waiting for everyone to get into the webinar, so just give us a couple minutes as everyone joins in and we get started. As we're doing that, if you want to just kind of drop in the Q&A where you are from, where you're joining us from, that'll give people a little bit of time to join us there and to join us on Facebook as well as we get that set up. So go ahead, we're going to use that Q&A function. So if you want to practice it now and just share where you are joining us from, if you just joined us. So I can see lots of different places in Kansas, Branson, Missouri, Illinois, Colorado, um, more Kansas, Connecticut, a little bit further. Rhode Island, for sure, a little bit further too. More Kansas and Colorado, Illinois, Arizona, Minnesota, or Missouri, Kansas, Texas. Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you all for joining us for tonight's webinar. We're excited to talk with you a little bit about our housing contract for the upcoming year. So we want to start off with some introductions because you'll hear from two of us tonight. You see me right now, but to introduce myself, my name is Whitney Penn. I'm the assistant director for student recruitment, marketing, and communications. I will be presenting kind of the informational piece of today's webinar. And then we have Kathy Vancinas, who's the assistant director for contracts and occupancy management, who will come on a little bit later after I've covered some of the informational pieces and cover the live demo. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We'll go into the next slide and just kind of overview what we're going to talk about for the evening. So in terms of the informational pieces that I'm covering, we're going to talk about the first year residency requirement, then go into what our housing process is and the timeline associated with that process. We're going to talk about residential CAT communities and specialty housing options so that you know what's available there. Oops. And then we're going to talk about meal plans and dining dollars, talk about roommate selection. Then Kathy will go through the live demo and actually show you the contract and all of the information that you're going to be entering in that contract. We'll, between the live demo and Q&A, cover some very final tips and tricks, things to be thinking about, and then we'll go into a question and answer session, kind of more formally. If we're going to go to the next slide, we're going to continue the overview and just cover a couple of key pieces of information. So as I mentioned, and you all have kind of already started with the Q&A, we're going to ask that you submit your questions throughout the entirety of the webinar using the Q&A feature if you are joining us on Zoom, or if you're joining us on Facebook Live, if you can add a comment to the video. We have a team behind the scenes who's working to answer your questions throughout the entire presentation. So even though we have the Q&A at the end of the Zoom or the webinar session rather, we want you to be able to ask your questions as we're going through information. So please put them in that Q&A function or again in the comments on Facebook Live. There may be some times where we direct you to learn more about questions regarding specific things. If you ask about room selection or move-in, we're going to have 2 additional webinars coming up, both in the spring and then one in the summer. That one is the room selection webinar and one is the move-in webinar, and we're going to cover those things in more detail during those webinars. So we may direct you to learn more about specifics during that time, but generally we'll be answering all of your questions that we can. To note, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website sometime tomorrow. We will also email the recording or the link to the recording for anyone who's participating tonight and even those who've been unable to join us. And so if for any reason you have to jump out of the webinar at some point this evening, you'll still have the opportunity to come back and look at the rest of the content as well through that recorded webinar, or just revisit any information that we have shared with you tonight as well. One final thing with the just things to keep in mind as we go through the webinar is that we're going to put links in the chat for some of the key websites that you need access that we're going to talk about during the webinar. So there may be some that are in the presentation as QR codes or the links are written out, but we want to make sure that you receive them in multiple ways. And so we're going to also be sharing those in the chat. So in the chat for Zoom, and then in the comments section for Facebook as well. So jumping in to the content, we're going to talk about the first year residency requirement. So just to make sure that everyone is aware, Manhattan does have a residency requirement that requires first year students to live on campus for their first 2 semesters. There is, however, an exemption process that students may apply for to potentially look and determine if they're exempt from living on campus. What the website that you can navigate to find more information about that is the First Year Living website. So as you can see on the right-hand side, you can either scan the QR code or go ahead and take down that link, or we're going to pop that link in the chat. And you can visit that for more information, learn if this applies to you, if it's something that you may be able to look into specifically for you as a student as you're coming on campus. A couple of things to note. So housing and dining services is the sole source of exemptions for everyone on campus. And so if you are talking with an advisor or someone else and they mention that you can look at applying for an exemption outside of housing and dining services, no one can approve you for that exemption. So you have to have submitted that exemption request and the required documentation. All of that information is on the website. And then hear from us as to whether you've been approved for that exemption. So when we talk about the exemptions, some of the common ones that you're going to see or that we see most frequently are approved off-campus living. Most often that's students who are living in a fraternity and going to be living within their fraternity house. There's also commuting student living, so living within a certain radius of Manhattan, or non-traditional student living. And so that could be that you are over 21. That process looks a little bit different for those who are over 21, but just wanted to mention a couple of those exemptions. And that process does open on December 9th for the 2025-2026 academic year. So keep that in mind. And we can jump into the process. So something to note for our housing processes, everything that you're going to do that requires a specific step for you to take is going to be done through the resident portal. So the resident portal is going to be a key link for you to continue to have access to. And especially within the contract process, you definitely need to have the link to the resident portal. So again, if you were to scan the QR code there or take down that link, or again, we'll pop that link in the chat for you to have, that's where you're going to go to do these various steps for within our housing process. So ultimately, this process is an overview of everything that leads up to basically arriving on campus or doing things in the summer to arrive on campus. So some of these different pieces, for example, the optional piece that's a little bit grayed out there on the left, that's kind of our first step, but again, you can see it's optional, so it's not necessarily something that you need to do, was for you to potentially submit your housing information request form. That did open on September 15th. It is still something that you're able to submit if you're wanting to do that, and we'll kind of mention why that may be beneficial for you to do as we kind of get into the demonstration and a couple of tips and tricks at the end. So obviously tonight, step 1, completing the residence hall housing contract is what our focus is. But we want to make sure that it's very clear what our process entails, because it may be different than if you're looking at other schools or what you've done in the past at various institutions for other kids, yourself, whatever that process looks like. So the first step is the critical step of completing that housing contract, which will go live next Monday, December 9th at 3:00 p.m. That is Central Time. That is also when the exemption process will open as well. And as you complete the housing contract, you will submit a $230 initial payment. 200 of that is refundable until June 1st. Why this is such a critical step in our process is that the date and time that you submit both your contract and that initial payment determine your date and time for room selection, which is step 3 in this process. And so it's critical that you do that process in order to get in line and be able to complete room selection. Now, something that's important to keep in mind that may differ from other processes is that when you complete the housing contract, you're not going to put preferences for rooms, you're not going to put preferences for buildings within that contract. It truly is just saving your place in line, again, based on that, the date and time that you submit it for that room selection process where you will actually go in and select the specific space that you want based on what's available at the time that you go in and select the room. So that looks a little bit different. I know I've gotten a lot of questions about that because I help coordinate our tour process and people want to make sure that they can put that information into the contract. But as you will see when Kathy walks you through that, that is not a part of our process. So just want to make sure that that is clear for you. So moving along, just for you to understand, if you can just jump back one slide, perfect, to step 2 and 3, just so that you understand kind of the full picture of our process. So step 2 doesn't necessarily require specific actions for you to take and specific actions, especially within the resident portal, but this is your time to explore what options that you have on campus and build your preference list going into room selection for step 3. So we have a couple of tools available for you to do that. One is the Explore Your Options tool, which Erica just dropped in the chat. The Explore Your Options tool allows you to compare up to 3 different options in a PDF and basically look at the cost of what those different options would be. So different room styles, different buildings, different meal plans, comparing those different options. And then you can reset that and compare 3 more options. So basically you can kind of look at what is feasible for you, both at a semester and yearly rate. The other thing is that from January through March, we will feature every single one of our communities on our Housing and Dining Services Facebook and Instagram accounts. So you'll get kind of an inside look at what is unique about each community and why you might want to choose one community over another community. So that's going to be a pretty critical time with both of those tools to be able to build that preference list for yourself. And then finally, I've mentioned this already, but again, you will actually go in and choose your room, select your room based on, again, what's available at the time that you are able to go in and select that space. If you have had a student that has come to K-State in the past, you may notice that this is a month earlier than the past years. So just to let you know, that is correct. It is going to be happening a month earlier this year. So specifically, and I'll go into this in a little bit, if you are in a residential CAT community or honors housing, you select a little bit earlier on March 25th. And then basically in kind of early to mid-April, depending upon when your contract and payment were submitted, then you will be given a room selection time and you'll be able to go in for anyone else and go ahead and select your space, again, based on what's available at the time that you are able to select. So I know that's a lot of information. Again, feel free to put any questions that you have in that Q&A feature because this is kind of critical. And the housing contract obviously is an important step in that entire process. So we're going to jump forward and look at a couple of specialty housing options. So I mentioned this as it related to room selection. So specifically, we have residential CAT communities. Residential CAT communities are, if you've heard of something like a living and learning community or other spaces, that's fairly similar to what we have within residential CAT communities, though they are set up a little bit differently. So they are managed by a department called K-State First on campus. And ultimately, what residential CAT communities are, the CAT in CAT communities stands for Connecting Across Topics. Students join CAT communities based on either a shared area of interest or area of study, and they live in the same residence hall or same general community, and they take a group of classes together with a peer mentor. So if you were to look on the right-hand side at that infographic, you can see 3 credit hours written twice. Those are 2 different courses that students take together. And you can see this is an example of one CAT community called Fandom and Film Studies. Students take a general psychology course and a fiction into film course that is with other students as well. But then they share a 1 credit hour course together that's called a connections course, in which you have one faculty member who is specifically dedicated to that course. And then you have a peer mentor, which we call a residential learning assistant, who is a part of that course and also lives within the residence hall or community that those students are living in, who are part of that community. Ultimately, all of these communities have a maximum of 22 students. So the idea is that if students join these communities, for example, you can see Fandom and Film Studies is part of the Derby community, Find Your Fit is in the Derby community, architecture, planning, and design is in the Kramer community, and pre-med in the Kramer community as well. Those are large buildings in each of those communities. And so the idea is that there is a community of, again, maximum of 22 students, that you can create a smaller community, that you take courses together, you can support each other academically, you can support each other socially because they do programming and other things together. And so those large communities become smaller communities for students who participate in these CAT communities. So we're going to show you a quick video of these CAT communities, and kind of to be able to show you why you might join a CAT community and why it could be beneficial to you.
Am I hitting play on here, Whitney?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not allowing me to do that. It's not allowing me to hit play.
Okay. Well, that's okay. We will send out the CAT community video when we send out the recording, since that doesn't seem to be wanting to work with us tonight. So take a look at that video. It is from the perspective of students who have joined the CAT communities, or even residential learning assistants, so those peer mentors who have guided and been a part of those communities in kind of a different sense. And so check those out to see if it may be something that would interest you, and why it may be beneficial to your time at K-State as well. Right. So we talked about CAT communities as a particular or specific living option that you could select. We also have 2 specialty housing options available for you as well. So the first is honors housing. Honors housing is within our Strong community. So that is relatively recently reopened. So this year it has been reopened, and we opened it to honors housing within that community. Specifically, honors housing will be available on select floors within that community for students who've been accepted into the university honors program. So the idea of the honors housing in community, essentially, is that it provides a living environment that really emphasizes both community development and academic success. So students who kind of share that common interest in academic pursuits and supporting one another through that. It also is within our Strong community, which has some historic and unique community spaces, and we're also renovating those buildings. And so there are going to be new things coming to that community that will be unique specifically to students who are participating both in the honors program, but more specifically from the residential side of things within honors housing as well. There is an additional application required to live in and be accepted into honors housing, in addition to be to being accepted in the University Honors Program. That will open on December 9th. And I will explain how you might indicate, and Kathy will show you how to indicate interest in these specialty housing options within the contract as well. And we'll follow up with a link to that application and other information you may want to know. So the second specialty housing option is the Smurthwaite Scholarship and Leadership House. This is an all-female community that houses up to 45 residents. It is structured a little bit differently in that it's more of a cooperative living environment that includes light cleaning and other requirements such as fundraising, philanthropy, etc. And it really focuses on 5 different pillars. So leadership, scholarship, service, friendship, and equity. That is what those requirements are based upon, and that is what work is done and kind of what type of activities that students engage in within the house. It also requires an additional application as well as an interview process, not like a job interview, but more just how for you to understand how does the community work? Does it seem like a good fit for you and for you to meet some of the residents who live in that community? So again, that application will open on December 9th. For all of these specialty housing options, again, you will indicate within the housing contract in a specific space if you're interested in that. So that's both for the residential CAT communities and which specific CAT communities. So it'll show you a list of all of the different CAT communities, honors housing, and the Smurthwaite Scholarship and Leadership House. Alrighty. So jumping forward, so this is more just to kind of talk about really kind of what is the next step after learning about those specialty housing options that you may come to within the housing contract process. So again, you will see this when Kathy shows you the contract live, but you will, as a part of the contract, select your meal plan and indicate whether you want to add dining dollars as well. So to go through what your meal plan options are, we have 2 different meal plan options at K-State. So the first is our all access, which gives you unlimited in-person meals per week and 5 on-the-go meals per week, as well as 5 guest passes for the semester. You can see the anticipated cost there for next year per semester. Then we also have the weekly 12, which gives you any combination of 12 in-person or on-the-go meals per week, and then 2 guest passes per semester. And then you can see the comparative cost there at the bottom. Our weekly 12 meal plan does reset every Friday. And so that's just important to know that if you are selecting that option and you use 11 out of 12 of those meal plans, that remaining 12th meal plan is not going to roll over into the next week. So just a couple of things to note. And then for most of you, this isn't going to apply, but just to make it clear that there are additional meal plans available for students who are living in Jardine, which is our apartment living option, which is not available to first-time students on campus, as well as meal plans available to transfer and off-campus students. So if you fall within one of those areas, reach out to us. Obviously, our contact information is at the bottom there. Feel free to reach out to us and we can talk you through and walk you through what those options are. All right, so I also mentioned dining dollars. Dining dollars are an optional supplement to either your all access or weekly 12 meal plan, whichever one you select. Again, I want to emphasize they are optional, but they could be beneficial in that dining dollars, you're able to utilize those dining dollars in our housing and dining services. That's what the HDS stands for there. Retail locations and participating student restaurants within the student union. Dining dollars, the perks of that is one that you get to use those in those restaurants. There are also monthly promotions that are available in those spaces for students who have dining dollars. And dining dollars can be billed to your CASES student account. So where everything else is billed, so your room, board, which is your meal plan, your tuition, your other fees, all of it can be added to that account as well. So that's kind of a benefit if you are thinking about using dining dollars. All right. So moving on to the last thing that I'm going to cover before um, Kathy jumps into the contract is talking about roommate selection. So Kathy will show you where this can be done within the housing contract, but really what we want to highlight with that is actually what's noted there at the bottom. As you are completing your housing contract, you do not need to have a roommate selected at this point to submit your housing contract because roommates can be selected after contract submission by editing the roommate portion of your contract, which you'll see here in a moment. So if you already have a roommate identified at this point, that's fantastic. There are a couple of different ways that, one, if you have that roommate identified, or two, if you're trying to find a roommate, that you are able to do that. So the first is in terms of finding and selecting a roommate, the preferred or confirmed roommate method. So you may know someone at this point who's going to K-State and that you want to live with them. So if that's the case, then all people who are interested in living together enter each other's information, which is your student ID number, which we call your Wildcat ID number. You enter that into the housing contract, confirm one another, and then you are good to go. If you want to find a roommate but don't know someone yet, we have something that's called RoomSync. It is our roommate matching app. You log into RoomSync for the first time through the resident portal, and then you can continue to use RoomSync through the app or through other ways without having to go into the resident portal once you have logged in that first time. So essentially that first time that you log in is associating you with K-State, and then you can continue to look, you're going to build a profile and continue to look at other profiles as you match with potential roommates. We are guessing that more profiles will be created in January or February this year, just given that we are moving room selection up by a month. So if you are creating one, say tomorrow or in the next couple of days, and you're not finding a lot of people yet, look back in January or February and kind of go through those different options or those different matches at that time as well. Now, the other way that you could eventually, when we get to room selection, find a roommate is that when you participate in that process, you as someone who is selecting a space can choose an open space within a room that someone has already selected, or you can choose an empty room and another student selects the other open space that remains in that room. So that's truly a random slash potluck style roommate where you would be able to do that again, just kind of by randomly pairing with a roommate through that method. So obviously that method, you wouldn't necessarily know someone at this point that you could confirm or prefer in the contract. But again, you do not have to have a roommate identified at this time to be able to complete that housing contract. All right, so moving forward, now that we have talked through all of these different pieces of information, I'm going to throw it over to Kathy, who's going to start walking you through the process of the contract, show you what's a part of the contract, and talk about all the different pieces that we just talked about and where to put that in the contract.
All right. Are you able to see this resident portal? And so you can access the resident portal from our K-State Housing and Dining Services homepage. If you are clicking, you'll see it up in the top right. It's also the first option under this housing section on there, or you can even scroll down a little bit further and click on this icon down here. So either one of those ways, you're going to sign in with your K-State EID and password. If you have not signed into the resident portal yet, we highly recommend that you do. And go ahead and do that now. The reason that we say that is sometimes people think they know what their EID is, but they might have two. And we've been able to really help students make sure they've got the right EID, the right password. We want to make sure everything is working for you ahead of time. So please log into the resident portal as soon as possible. And if you are having any issues getting logged in, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can assist you. If you log into your resident portal here tonight, you're going to see a little bit of a different screen. You're going to see a lot more options on here. This is what the screen is going to look like on December 9th at 3 p.m. And the reason is we're just trying to eliminate all of the extra things that the system might need to do so that we can make it process information faster. So on December 9th, you're going to see a very basic contract link on there. So this student has already completed the request for information form. And so we are going to continue on to the contract. When you come in here, you can see some information about the contract, explore your options, that room sync that Whitney talked about, and then also just a reminder of those room selection times. If you click the continue to contract, this is the first page. This is what that request for information form is purely just that first page of the contract. So if you do this ahead of time, you will not need to do this on contract day. And that will save you 15, 20 seconds, and that could bump your space by 200 people, quite honestly. So doing this step ahead of time is definitely recommended. Go ahead and put your alternate email. That might be a Gmail or a Yahoo cell phone provider. We see things like myself, mom, dad. What we're looking for there is Verizon or AT&T, T-Mobile, those types of things. So parent or guardian email, we recommend adding that in just because sometimes we'll send things out of room selection is coming or the contract cancellation deadline is coming, and we just send it to a lot of people. You get very busy your senior year in April and May, and so we just want to make sure nobody misses any of those important deadlines. So we try and include everyone in that messaging. So you can include their email or their phone, indicating international student and the main address, selecting which class you will be, your major, and then your academic status is either new, that will be most of you returning, I'm a returning K-State, or you're a transfer to K-State. So we're going to indicate new here, and we're going to process through this. I've been letting my system sit for a little bit. And so this is the first page of that contract then, or what you will see on December 9th if you've done the request for information ahead of time. And you can see you can track your progress here at the top. So we're on the third screen here. We ask if you need to stay during university break period. So the residence halls do close down the week of Thanksgiving, also spring break, and then we're also closed between the time the fall semester ends in December until we reopen in spring. So if you do need to stay, there is an additional cost that is not figured into the semester cost. You would just go ahead and click the fall break, the winter break, or the spring break, or whatever you would need. If you're not certain, I would just leave it blank. You can have up until the Monday before the break begins to either add or delete it from your contract. So if you're not sure, just leave it blank and then make sure that you do get it added if you would like to stay. Here's where Whitney talked about that residential CAT community. And so if you click on this yes option, all the CAT communities will pop down. One of them, if you are an architecture student, you'll notice that the AP Design CAT community is not showing. That is because I did not select architecture as my major. So if you select architecture as your major, then you'll see the architecture CAT community. So there is some logic built into the system to help guide you to the correct CAT community. You can click on any of those and see a description of what is the description of the CAT community, which residence hall it will be located in, and then the classes that are involved in that. So in order to select it, you would just literally click on that radio button, and that is all you would need to do. Now, this does not enroll you in the CAT community. This is you telling us that you have interest in living in that CAT community. And what we as Housing and Dining will do is we will send this information over to our partners in K-State First. They'll look at it and make sure, yes, you're an architecture major, you're requesting to be in AP Design. That makes logical sense. And they will send you an email asking you to indicate, yes, you definitely want to enroll in this process. So it is a two-step process on that. Make sure that you complete the confirmation once K-State First sends that to you. It'll probably be February when they send it to you, February and March. So just kind of be on the lookout for that. If you don't confirm, you will not be signed up for that CAT community. So just be aware of that. Specialty housing, this is the SmartWay Leadership Scholarship House, the honors housing option. Or we also, if you are a student that is looking for some gender inclusive housing option, go ahead and click on that and our staff will reach out to you to talk through those options that you may need. So all of these options here to date on this are optional. You don't need to select any of them. But you can scroll down and this question right here is required. You cannot proceed to the next screen without selecting this. So on December 9th, when it is really busy, you could leave all of these things blank. You can come back and edit anything on the contract that you want, and it won't change your selection date and time. Or your submission date and time, I apologize. But this meal plan you must choose. So you can choose the all access or the weekly 12. You can change your mind 100 times a day if you want. You just log into the system and change that in there and we'll show you how to do that. This is where you can add dining dollars or the initial time that you could add dining dollars, or you can just leave it as no, you're not interested at this time. If you have any special dietary needs, so maybe you're dairy intolerant or gluten-free or other dietary needs, we would recommend that you click this button right here. And what will happen is one of our registered dietitians in either of our dining centers will reach out to you and they help develop a customized meal selection option for you. You'll get a menu that says, avoid these foods, or if based on your needs, these are the foods that you could eat in the dining center on any of the given meals. So if you have any sort of need, definitely reach out to our registered dietitians on that. We're going to click next on here. And going through here. It is the evening. I took too long. Maybe. Let me jump here. Can you see the PowerPoint, Whitney?
Yes.
Okay. So let me do that from current. I apologize. I wanted to jump into this one. Okay. Thank you for your patience on this. Okay. Are you seeing the slide about the roommates on here?
Yes.
Okay. So when you get to this slide, you will enter a student's Wildcat ID number right in here, and then you're going to hit the plus sign. Again, on December 9th, I would recommend just skipping this step. You can add it later, and we'll show you how. We will ask you to respond whether or not you smoke or use other tobacco products, or if you object to living with somebody that smokes. These questions are defaulted to the no, you do not smoke, and yes, you object to living with a smoker. So if those answers are different for you, make sure that you definitely change those on there. And from there, you're going to click that next button. On this next page, this is the contract information disclosure. Again, December 9th, you can just click next on this. This is something you can edit later. But I can't say enough, please come back and edit this later. If mom or dad or a friend is going to be calling in and asking about your housing account, unless their name is listed in this, we cannot tell them any specific information. So make sure that you do come back. You're just going to click the I hereby consent, and you're going to list the names of the individuals that we can talk to. So make sure it's Jane Smith or John Smith, not mom and dad. So we don't know maybe mom and dad's name. So make sure you list mom and dad's name on that as an example. Going to click here next. You're going to come to the terms and conditions. Now, this is a legally binding contract. We want to make sure that you understand that when you submit, hit submit on this. We have a copy of the terms and conditions available on our website. We'll have the website here a little bit later. So we highly recommend that you walk through them. Make sure you understand what you are signing as you go through this process. On the day of the contract, a lot of people try and go through these terms and conditions quickly, which is why we recommend review these ahead of time. Make sure you understand what you are signing. So there's a lot of information. You'll just continue to scroll down on those information. So just know that it's not, a quick scroll down. There's a couple of them. You will see this highlighted section, termination by resident, and we highlighted this very specifically. This is, again, just a reminder that if you cancel by June 1st of 2025, you'll get a full refund of your contract down payment, typically that $200. If you cancel after June 1, there is the $200 cancellation fee. The second one is letting you know that this is an academic year contract. So if you move in August and then in December a spot opens in your sorority house and you would like to move into there. If you are granted an exemption, then you choose to move off, just know that there is a 50% buyout of both the room and meal plan portion of your contract for the spring semester. So we just want you to know that ahead of time, really think through that. You'll meet with one of our staff members prior to cancellation, so we'll make sure that you're aware of that before you cancel as well on those pieces. You'll scroll down a little bit more, and at the bottom, you're going to have the I read, understand. The handbook is a part of this contract. Those are things like I agreed to not smoke in the residence halls. I agreed to not have unapproved animals in those halls. I agreed not to bring my bike inside the hall. Those types of things. That is a part of this contract. You're going to click that you have read and fully agreed to the terms of the contract, and then you're going to answer this felony question. Have you ever entered a guilty plea or a felony offense? So make sure that you are clicking no or yes, whatever the appropriate answer is for you, and then you'll click the I agree. You're going to come up then to do a review page. So you'll just see all the answers that you've entered into there, and then you can review it. You can click the edit button if you want, and it will take you back to that page to edit. And then at the bottom, you'll click next. And then you'll come to the initial payment screen, and you're going to click this to pay $230 now. If you have any questions or concerns about making that $230 payment, please contact our office. We'll be more than happy to assist you. This is what that credit card page is going to look like. You're going to enter your credit card information up here. You're going to have the expiry month and date, their cardholder information. So sometimes your computer may have that cached and enters very quickly, but just make sure you have your credit card out and ready to go. It'll save you some time. You're going to click this next button after that, and it will say, are you sure that you want to do that? You may see this pop up as, hey, this field can't be blank. You do need to enter that security code. And we're not entirely sure why, but it happens year after year. If you wait about 3 seconds, that will automatically let you proceed. So please don't panic if you're seeing that. Just kind of wait the 3 seconds and the screen will automatically go to this submit payment. So you're going to want to make sure that you click the submit payment option on that screen. Once you have submitted the payment, it's going to come back and it's going to say your contract is complete. This is the verbiage that you're looking for to make sure that everything processed through. If you click out of that payment screen too early, it may not completely process, so just let it process. It may seem painfully slow, just let it process and make sure you get this contract complete. Once you are, we recommend click on this home button down here at the bottom. And on the front screen, you're going to see residential contract completed on this date and time. And as long as you are seeing that, you know that your contract has been submitted and you are good to go. What we recommend on December 9 is if you can help us after that point, just go ahead and log out. And so that will allow other people to do the contract. Just take a sigh of relief, and then you can come back in a couple of days and we can do the editing on that contract piece. Here is that sample terms and conditions. We have those on our website if you are needing to do that piece on there. So let me go ahead and stop that share and see if I can run it through the edit options. Okay. Animation. I apologize. I'm not um, doing this well here tonight. Maybe it is this one. Okay. All right. So after you have submitted the contract, you can log in the next day, etc. You're going to see this edit contract link. And so go ahead and click on that. And then it will bring you to this page where you can say, what do you want to edit? The housing and meal plan options, the dining dollars, this is that roommate preferences, the cat community options, or that information disclosure. You are able to just select which one that you are interested in editing. So if you selected the housing and meal plan options, you'll see this is the exact screen that you saw as part of the actual contract. So you can just save the information that you are wanting to change, and then just make sure you select that save button at the bottom. If you're wanting to purchase dining dollars, you can purchase a selected amount. Maybe you selected dining dollars but didn't want it. You can remove dining dollars in the screen. Roommate preferences, again, here you can add additional roommates, or maybe this person was going to come to K-State and now is choosing not to come to K-State and you want to remove them as a potential roommate. You can come in here and edit those. Just so you aware, we're going to cover this during the room selection process as well. This is how you confirm a preferred roommate prior to selecting a room. Once you select a room, there's a little bit of a different process. You need to make sure you update your room selection. But for right now, go in and make sure you just add your roommates in those ways. You can add cat communities if you want, and this is where you would click and then add that information disclosure. This is such an important, if you're not going to do it the first round, this is such an important thing to do as you go through. You can edit those contracts as many times as you want. That will not change your room's contract submission date and time. So just being aware of that. We recommend going in and editing it, looking at it and making sure it's correct and editing it to your heart's content on that. So, all right. I will turn it back over to Whitney, and Whitney, I will attempt to bring yours back up and
Perfect.
apologize.
While Kathy is doing that, we have a couple of questions that when we get to the Q&A portion, that seem to be common questions. Some of them may be answered by this slide here. So as we kind of start to wrap up the information and the live demo, just pay particular attention to those different pieces that are the common questions and these things. So things to keep in mind, specifically I mentioned some tips. So there are a lot of questions about EIDs, which is your username and setting up the password, and having difficulties with that. So one thing to be sure to do prior to December 9th or prior to you submitting the contract is to log in and confirm your EID. Again, that's your username and password before the contract goes live. So you're going to first set that EID up if you have not already done so by going to eid.k-state.edu. That's an important link, so we'll drop that in the chat as well for you to be able to go to make sure that you are correctly setting up that password. Even if you have logged in, make sure you log in again, because if it's been some time, I know sometimes people forget passwords and what your login information is. So go ahead and do that again before next Monday. We already talked about this, but if you want to, as a part of that, as you are checking your EID and password, if you want to complete the housing information request form before December 9th to have that first portion done, that would be a suggestion as well. As Kathy mentioned, we have our sample contract on the website, which basically just goes over the terms and conditions that you're agreeing to when you complete and submit the housing contract. So we'll pop that link in the chat to that sample contract, but it is available on our Housing and Dining Services main webpage. You kind of have to scroll down a little bit on that webpage, but you'll see an icon and then a link to that sample contract on our website as well. So We'll make sure to put that in the chat as well so that you're able to navigate to that sample contract ahead of time and know what you're agreeing to, because as Kathy said, this is a contract and it is legally binding. So it's important that you know what the terms and conditions of that contract is. A really critical thing is when we get to Monday, and if you're completing your contract, then be patient. Click on links only one time. The resident portal is going to run slowly when it goes live. To give you some context, last year within the first day, we had 1,900 people submit their contracts. So that's a lot of people within the resident portal all at once, all submitting contracts. So it's gonna run a little bit more slowly. So just be patient. And again, click on links only one time. An additional piece of information with that is use a computer to complete the contract. Doing so on your phone is not going to be easy, is not going to work very well. I know, Kathy, one question that came up is if there's a specific browser that works better for the contract. So I don't know, I'm not sure the answer to that question, but I don't know if you know.
Yeah, we test the contract in all of the browsers, but we would recommend Microsoft Edge or Chrome. We don't recommend Mozilla or I don't even remember the Explorer, Internet Explorer. Please avoid those. It does work in there, but it doesn't work as well. So Chrome or Microsoft Edge is what we would recommend.
Perfect. Thank you. Then a couple of other reminders. Again, I'm going to reiterate, you are not going to submit building or room preferences within your housing contract. So a couple of people asked about whether you can say that you're preferencing the Kramer community, for example, or you want to select a specific building or a specific room style. You are not going to do that as a part of the housing contract process. So you can see from what Kathy walked you through and the screenshots that she had, there's not a space in there in the contract for you to do that. So again, the date and time that you submit your housing contract and payment, then in the spring, you'll actually go in and based on your room selection time, choose what's available at that point in time. And that may be within the community and the style of room and the building that you're hoping to get, but again, you're not going to put that within the housing contract. As Kathy said, or maybe we didn't touch on this yet, you can edit your contract until July 1st without affecting your place in line for room selection. And even kind of after July 1st, the process just looks a little bit different for you to potentially make changes to that contract. So a couple of things to keep in mind. All right, so with that said, a couple of things to know before we jump into the Q&A. We've talked and mentioned several times about the room selection webinar. So you can go ahead and save the date for Tuesday, March 11th. We will have that room selection webinar where we will go through specifically how to do room selection. We will again show you live how to do that. We'll show you a couple of different scenarios about how to do that based on roommates, based on whether you're a part of a CAT community or honors housing, etc. So we'll show different ways for you to navigate that so that you're familiar with it before going into room selection when that opens either end of March or early to mid-April for you. And then on the next slide, follow us if you have not already. Either join us on Facebook or our Instagram accounts at K-State HDS. And specifically tomorrow, we will be on our Instagram account. We'll have a live Q&A. So if there are follow-up questions from this evening, or after you've had some time to sit with the information that we shared with you, if there's a question that comes up, feel free to jump on there, ask your question, and we will be answering those between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. tomorrow. So just another avenue for you to be able to get answers to your questions as we continue to approach the contract opening date of Monday next week. All right. So that is our final slide. And we'll just move to the last slide, which just has contact information for us, and we'll keep this up throughout the Q&A. So Kathy and I may kind of jump back and forth answering different questions. We've highlighted, our team behind the scenes has highlighted some frequent questions that have been asked. But ultimately, before we get to that, I just want to mention, which you kind of saw throughout the entire presentation, our contact information is here. So after this evening, after tomorrow's live Instagram Q&A, if you have any questions at all, you can reach out through any of those means, or navigate to our website and look for information, or again, go back through this webinar and find the information that you are looking for. So a couple of the common questions, go ahead and continue adding any questions that you have to the Q&A, and we'll identify if there are any specific ones that we're going to answer live. But Kathy, if we want to go ahead and start, some common questions so far have been, how do we take payment? How much is it? And then what does that payment go towards? So I figured that might be a good question for you to answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work, Transact is the payment portal that we work through as we demoed at the end of that contract. You can make a payment with a credit card or a Visa, like a Visa check card on there. So anywhere that a credit card would be taken on that. The payment is $230. 200 of that is a refundable deposit, essentially, or initial payment onto your contract. And then the $30 is a processing fee. That $30 is often used. There's some of the admin, but a lot that is what funds all of our programming efforts in the residence halls as well. So that's where that money goes, is that programming in the different residence halls on that. The 200 is refundable up until June 1st. We will refund it to the credit card used to make the original payment. So it will just go back straight back to that card. Another question some people ask is, I have a college savings 529 plan. I'd like to make a check out. How do I do that? You would just need to contact our office and send that check into our office, and we can process your contract once we have received that check. So give us a call if you've got questions specifically about that. We would be more than happy to help you on that one. Any other questions that are coming in?
Yeah. Another question that came up is just if you can kind of go back through what sections can they maybe skip over, or not have to worry about quite as much in completing the
Sure.
contract, and then go back to later.
Yeah, let me bring this up here. See if I can stop that share and bring up this. Okay, reshare that screen. Okay, so on December 9th, you'll go ahead and click on there. That's required. You'll hit the continue to contract. Oh, sorry. If you filled out this information, you won't have to do that on that day. So make sure you do the request for information. Ignore the breaks. The only thing on this oh, I'm so sorry. Trigger finger. Page 3 is what we're on right now. The only thing that you absolutely have to answer on that page is what meal plan you would like to have. That is a required. You'll see that highlighted yellow. So look for the highlighted yellow, select either of those meal plans, and then you can select next. None of these things are required. So you can skip the page 4 if you wanted to and come back and edit that later. This page 5, the information release, also editable later. Go ahead and skip that. Terms and conditions, again, as long as you've read them ahead of time and know what you're doing and agreeing to, you will need to scroll down to the bottom and click these 3 buttons, and make sure you click all 3 of them and click the I agree.
Kathy,
At the,
sorry to jump in. I think, can you try resharing your screen?
I will definitely do that. I'm so sorry. Are you seeing this now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Let me start over here. So on that day, you'll click this complete or complete the contract, hit continue to contract. as long as you've done this, the request for information ahead of time. All right, so this is page 3 where we talked about the break housing. You can ignore that. You can ignore the residential cat communities. You will need to scroll down and select the meal plan, and you'll see this highlighted in yellow. So scroll down, select the meal plan, click next. So far on page 3, select a meal plan and click next. This one, all editable later, so I would ignore it. Information disclosure, again, editable later, go ahead and ignore it. Terms and condition, as long as you've read it ahead of time and understand you're signing a legally binding document, you can scroll down and you're going to select these 3 buttons. You won't be able to proceed without saying you understand and agree to the terms and the felony question. Once you click I agree on this review page, go ahead and scroll down and hit next, and then it will take you to the payment. And as long as you have your credit card in your hand or know that number by heart at this point, you can do that. So again, just a reminder, on step 3, the first page that you're going to come to, you're going to need to answer the meal plan question, and then you can click next until you get to the bottom of the terms and conditions, and then click those 3, and then you're on your way. So there's really only those 4 things that you absolutely have to select before going to the payment option. Did that answer that question?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Another question that we have been seeing come through is, sorry, lost it there for a second. About meal plans. So I've seen a lot of questions come through about changing meal plans. So to be able to answer each of the different facets of what those questions have been, one, if when you select your meal plan as you submit the housing contract, you are able to edit that until July 1st. So you can come in at any point in time if you selected the all access and moved to the any 12 or the weekly 12. Sorry.
Yep.
Or vice versa, you can make that change. After
You
July
can
1st,
actually, yeah, you can actually change it in your resident portal up until September 15th. So even after July 1st, that is one that you can continue to schedule, change in your resident portal. Just know that whatever your selection is on July 1, that's what your fall billing will go to. So let's say you selected the all access, we will bill you for the all access amount, and then you want to reduce it to the weekly 12. You'll see a credit for the difference between the two come onto your cases account. That's the other thing too with the payment, that initial payment, how will you know? How will we apply it? So we are going to bill your room and meal plan charges to your cases account, and then you're going to see a $200 credit also applied to your bill, and it will come across as a housing and dining initial payment. So you should see that on your list of charges that will come through cases account on there.
And for your meal plan option, there have been a couple questions about are you locked in for the year? There's another opportunity when we get to the spring semester for you to be able to make changes to that as well. So if you find that in the fall semester, the meal plan wasn't what you were hoping for or needed, then you can make a change to that meal plan for the spring semester. And would do that within the resident portal as well, and just making an edit to that contract. Mm-hmm.
Looks like there's some questions. The differences between an EID and a Wildcat ID number. So the EID, or your electronic identification. So that is the front of or the beginning of your K-State email address. So for instance, housing@ksu.edu, housing is the EID, or the electronic identifier. So when you're signing into our resident portal, etc., you won't add the @KSU. You will only add the housing, whatever that EID is. A Wildcat ID number, think of it almost like your K-State Social Security number. It's a 9-digit number that starts with an 8. And so you'll use that to add roommates. For instance, you'll need their Wildcat ID number to enter that information in. That should have come on your acceptance letter, but if you have questions or you're not sure, give us a call and we'll be happy to get you connected with that information.
Okay. We're gonna try to finish the rest of the questions that are coming in. I see one that I just lost it. Well, it's being answered, but I'll just go ahead and answer it live as well. So any of when you swipe your meal, when you swipe your ID card to get a meal for either plan, it is an all you can eat structure. So basically you can go in, you swipe your meal card once or your ID card for a meal once, and then you can help yourself to whatever is open in the dining center at that point, and however much you're wanting to eat within that meal. So again, all you can eat at that point. So it doesn't matter whether you have the all access or weekly 12. That's going to be the same when you enter the dining center. You're going to get the same benefits as you walk in for each meal that you use. All right. See. We have maybe one more question. But as we finish up those final questions that are coming in, and we have people answering behind the scenes, typing those out. See, just want to make sure there's nothing came through. Perfect. I just wanted to thank you all for joining us tonight, letting us share a little bit about the process with you. Hopefully this was helpful as we move into the housing contract when that opens on Monday. So thank you again for joining us. I will just reiterate, this is going to be recorded, so you can come back to this. All of the information that is within this housing contract is available on our website. You can reach out to us at any time to be able to follow up on this information. And so there are lots of ways that if you still have questions remaining after tonight, again, you can join us for the live Q&A on Instagram tomorrow, or reach out to us at any point in time if there are remaining questions for us to answer for you. So again, thank you so much. We will we have all of your contact information to email you. So we will follow up with you, and we will send that email out tomorrow with the recorded link, but it will also be available on our website. So again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening, and we're going to go ahead and hop off. And again, thank you so much.